PetaPixel podcast. PetaPixel podcast. Hey everybody, it's the PetaPixel podcast. How's it going?
Good. I liked that better than the other one. That was great.
Yeah. I'm going to keep on mixing it up. And if you're just listening to us, this sounds like every other episode, but if you're watching on YouTube, wait, we got a 4-box situation. Something's going on. Chris, what's going on here?
Well, we're joined by our very good friend Tom Calton, who we met in Osaka when we did the Panasonic S9 launch, and he has since moved to Bragg Creek, just outside of Calgary, which is awesome. So, yeah, exactly. So thanks for joining us today, Tom.
You're so welcome. Look, I have to either travel to the other side of the globe or move basically next door to you for you to take notice of me, Chris. I mean, this is what it's taken to finally get on this podcast.
Yeah, I know, and I understand the complete, and I think pretty much all YouTubers will move to Calgary here eventually, although the bandwidth could be better. I will say that the bandwidth could be definitely better. But Tom, thanks for joining us. I mean, if you haven't checked out Tom's YouTube channel, he's got a great channel that talks a lot about compact cameras, classic cameras, fixed cameras, and for our main story today, I think this would be perfect, right, Jordan?
Yeah, absolutely. We want to talk about fixed lens cameras. They're hot, they're back in vogue, and we want to figure out from every major camera company, what would we like to see them build in this classic camera? So stay tuned for that. It's going to be great. And on that very topic, I always like to open things up with a question. So a lot of the time I talk about first, and we learned a horrible lesson when I asked about first memories a couple weeks ago.
That was
so
dark.
This time I want to do last. Guys, what was the last fixed lens camera that you actually owned?
Oh my goodness.
I know, right? Because for a while there, it was like interchangeable lenses. That's not something most people have access to. If you were shooting digital or even like a film camera that was fixed lens, that was just the mainstream way to go for a while.
Owned or used? Because obviously
I want to say owned.
Yeah, because we've used like a Q3 and stuff
used.
like that.
Everybody's just going to be like X106, done.
Yeah. So the last one that I owned, we're going way back. I actually got a Yashica Y35 GT, and this is going back quite a while. I love that camera. So I actually had one in the UK when I lived there, Tom, because I wanted to be closer to you. Except I don't know if you were even born back then, and you were probably like 3 years old. And it was a great camera. I bombed around London with it. And it was always a little sketchy with the battery life and stuff, and I had to like always fix wires and things. But beautiful camera, Y35 GT. Sorry, Y35 was that really garbage one that we used where they stole the Yashica name.
Yes. Yeah, I was going to say.
No, don't. That one's horrible.
You Yashica, bought it? You fool.
No. Yashica Electro 35 GT. That's the one. All right.
Jaron, do you recall?
So long.
I thought it was going to be the Fujifilm FinePix A210, but then I remembered that I actually own an RX100 Mark IV. So,
nice.
That is my camera. The last one that I fixed lens that I actually
was that
own.
The last one with the really good 1.828 lens?
Yes, it's the last RX100 that I say is actually good. After that, Sony decided to put a slower lens that I think is slightly longer, and then they also
quite a bit longer. Yeah.
They put a bunch of like tracking features and sports mode features in it, which is absurd for this camera. I remember hating the 5. Like I think it was in New York when I was reviewing the 5.
That sounds right. Yeah.
This camera stinks. I want my 4 back. So yeah, that was my last one. Tom, what was yours?
That was my first impression of you, Jaron. Is just like, man, this guy is so angry, and it was
because it wasn't as good. It was
Yeah.
clearly a downgrade in like every way that made the RX100 good. Tom,
I was just trying to think. I think it was the Fujifilm X10. I think, which is great little compact camera. Slow as hell though, so you have to be really patient with it. But I mean, I think like form factor and styling, absolutely beautiful. Optical viewfinder thing, completely pointless. Don't know why they bothered. But apart from that, great fun.
I was really trying to piece this together because I was big into video for the longest time, but then I remembered my parents actually got me an Olympus C310 when I was like heavy into video, and they're like, well, you like video, maybe you'll like photography. This thing had a 3x zoom, 3.2 megapixels, but I remember it could record TIFFs, which were like this thing shot to XD cards. So I think the biggest I could get was like maybe 128 megs. So it was like 4 pictures if I wanted to dabble with the magical world of TIFF. But it's funny because I got this and immediately I just started using it as a camcorder recording video clips, but there was no sound and it was like 320 by 240 and I already had a camcorder. So I don't even know what happened to that thing, but it's just funny that I like had a stills camera and then it would be like another 6 years before I'd be like, oh, actually, I like photography now that I work at a camera store and stuff like that. But that was my first taste of fixed lens camera joy. But now that we're in a fixed lens state of mind, guys, I think it's time to kick off the PetaPixel podcast.
If you're serious about capturing faraway shots with incredible sharpness, the OM system the OM system M.Zuiko ED 150-600 f5.6-6.3 IS lens, Jordan, is for you. It offers an expansive zoom range, giving you the flexibility to get closer to wildlife, landscapes, and even celestial bodies like the moon without compromising on image quality.
Big fan of the moon too.
This lens is engineered with an advanced optical design that delivers crisp, clear images at any focal length. Plus, its powerful image stabilization feature allows you to shoot handheld with ease, making it a perfect companion for telephoto opportunities where a tripod isn't practical. But to handle the harshest environments, the M.Zuiko ED 150-600 is fully weather sealed, so you can keep shooting even when the conditions aren't ideal. Kind of like basically all of OM Systems cameras too. Mm-hmm. Whether it's rain, dust, or freezing temperatures, this lens is ready for anything. With its lightning-fast autofocus, you'll always capture every split-second detail. The M.Zuiko ED 150-600mm is designed to keep up with the fast-paced action of wildlife and nature photography, delivering accuracy and high performance. Right now, you can purchase the M.Zuiko ED 150-600 f5.6-6.3 IS for $700 off. It's regularly $2699.99. Now it's under $2,000 by a penny. $1,999.99. That's actually, you know what? This lens was kind of expensive. Tell me more. This is a good deal. Chris, you use this lens at a zoo, right? As I recall, is that where you reviewed this?
I did, absolutely. And yeah, I mean, obviously it's big, but it does give you incredible reach with the 2x crop factor on those cameras. So worked well, focused well, very sharp, like it.
$700 off.
Chris was like, this lens, it's too long. I can't actually, at a zoo, utilize our end of this and test it. The animals aren't far enough away.
I have to get further away. It was rough.
Got to photograph the moon.
Well, that $700 discount won't last forever. Don't wait. Head to explore.omsystem.com/petapixel or visit an authorized retailer near you to take advantage of this special offer. Thanks to OM System for sponsoring the PetaPixel podcast. Let's get into talking about OM System's friend, Panasonic. Panasonic announced, actually this morning.
Are they friends?
Well, they're in the Micro Four Thirds group together.
I feel like they're roommates. They live together, but they don't necessarily like each other. I feel like it's
mildly antagonistic.
Yeah, they're like, you like ate my food and you didn't take the garbage out. And then like, well... Yeah, you don't put the lid down.
Okay,
Panasonic's been canoodling with Leica and Sigma at the same time.
There's always like a sock on the door. It's like, like don't come in. Like I'm
fine.
Got somebody over.
OM Systems roommate Panasonic announced a new Lumix 18-40 millimeter f4.5-6.3 this morning. In addition to an update to the S9 firmware. Jordan's holding it right now. Look at that thing. It pops up. It pops back down. It's got some excellent...
It is bitty.
It's very small. So Chris and Jordan published their... I guess it's kind of almost a re-review. It's more like here's a review of a lens with some more information about how it changes the S9 this morning. Thoughts that you want to just kind of give the audience just some basic overview of what you think of what Panasonic has done here?
Yeah, so the firmware I'll let Jordan talk about because it's really more video based, and I think there's some important changes there. The lens itself, it's an 18-40. It's not particularly fast. It's 4.5 to 6.3. That's actually really slow, and that does make it very small. So the first thing I really was quite impressed by is it's compact and it's collapsible, but it doesn't feel like absolute trash. It actually has a really nice manual focus ring. The barrel's not wobbly. You normally expect these collapsible lenses to be really fiddly. And so that's all really good. And they kept it very small. And that makes sense on the S9. In the end, though, I still felt like I always wanted a longer telephoto reach. The S9 originally was kitted with like either the terrible lens cap 26mm, absolute garbage. We'll get Tom's impression on that. But also the 20 to 60, which is a good lens. And honestly, it's not that big. I prefer the 20 to 60. I feel like I wanted the old kit lens instead of the new one. So suffice to say, it didn't really blow me away, but you should definitely watch the video. You'll get a better idea on it there. But the firmware is exciting, right, Jordan?
Yeah, so the firmware, we now have gotten rid of you can disable the record limit, essentially, which was just way over the top. They rate them at 40 degrees Celsius, all of their overheat thresholds, which, yeah, I mean, it's nice to know.
What was it before, like
25
25 minutes?
10 minutes?
No, yeah, 6K was 10-minute cutoff, 4K recording was a 15-minute cutoff.
And you determined that it could actually go 2 hours?
Yeah, we're testing these cameras out in Osaka, and it's like, well, once it shuts down, you just hit the record button again. But it's super tedious, and if you wanted to film yourself, like, it's going to be maddening to every 10 minutes. Like, well, I was filming myself in 6K the other day, and trust me, it took more than 10 minutes for me to get through an ad. God help me. So this just makes things a lot easier, and that way you can turn off the overheat threshold, and it'll just wait until the camera is so hot that it's uncomfortable to hold, certainly, but it'll only shut down when it might actually damage the camera, which makes a lot of sense to be able to turn that on. And yeah, I killed the battery in 4K up to 30 frames and 6K up to 30 frames. The only one where it would actually overheat the camera was 4K 60. And there I still got 50 minutes. And most people will just use that for slow-mo. So I don't think it's a real problem. So that makes it more usable. The other thing is these have open gate recording, which rules. It shoots the 3:2 aspect ratio, and then you can pick your frame afterwards if you want to reframe for vertical or different aspect ratios. But it would only show one frame guide, which seemed super counterintuitive. The whole idea of this is compose for multiple ones, and you couldn't do that before. Now you can. You can move the frame lines around. It's super intuitive. So, yeah, just a couple of nice features that make kind of what this was advertised as initially, a creator camera. It's now more of a creator camera. Tom, what did you think in Osaka about the limitations of the S9?
It was by far my biggest bugbear with it. Doing any sort of piece to camera, I think in my review I even said my biggest criticism of it is that it's great for content creators if you're just doing small snippets and stuff, but 9 times out of 10 people, even content creators, have to take on other gigs to make money. So not being the 10-minute limit, sure, you can just press the record button again, but believe me, I've used it since then, and you forget. You're just in the flow, you're talking, and then you're like, great, I've been talking to myself in a dark room for the last 5 minutes and I haven't even realized. And then you don't know where the pickup line is. So then you have to honestly, I just stopped using it in the end because for me personally, it wasn't like, other than B-roll, it just wasn't usable. So I'm really glad they've implemented this. I think this is something that they probably should have done from the start. And I think they would have I think people have forgiven the whole risk of overheating. I'm okay with that. I'd rather risk overheating it than have to spend more time going through footage that I've recorded to find out where I need to pick up. It's just too stressful.
Yeah. So, you're an expert on this, using these compact cameras for street photography and the design of the S9. Do you feel like having a smaller lens is going to make this more useful for people? Was that an issue you had, or do you feel like the S9 needs changes that maybe can't be updated with firmware or new optics?
I think small lenses are definitely going to help. I don't know whether I feel like this zoom is okay. It's something you could use, but I mean, Viltrox had just brought out that 28mm Pancake, which that's what they needed to launch with the S9. I personally think that would have been such a good street photography or travel photography camera. I think the rolling shutter thing's always going to be a bit of an issue. Me personally, I kind of can live with that. I'm okay with it. I know it really winds a lot of people up, and you obviously can't stick a mechanical shutter back in it, unfortunately, unless you do like a Pentax Q and start putting them in the lenses or something like that. But yeah, I mean, I think it's a step in the right direction, but I do think they need to get there a little bit quicker. I think we need to see more smaller lenses if we're going to start really taking the S9 seriously as a, small portable street photography camera.
All right, well, thank you for those thinky thoughts, Tom. They're smarter than mine. We're going to go on and talk about the other stuff that happened this week. This actually got Jordan excited during our morning meeting yesterday. You made like a very excited face. I distinctly recall it. Nikon has patented a design for a sensor. So this is going to be like their second kind of novel design for camera sensors that we've seen. The Z6 III had a somewhat novel design as well. This one describes a selective global shutter. The patent describes a hybrid sensor which combines rolling and global shutter technology to theoretically leverage the benefits of a global shutter without incurring the technology's cost. This is an unusual concept. Jordan, do you want to talk a little bit about it?
Yeah, I mean, the idea here is it's using them. It doesn't seem to be something where it's using them separately, like, a toggleable switch between like using a regular conventional rolling shutter and a global shutter, because there are definitely image quality penalties to those global shutters. We certainly saw that with the A9 III. So what's interesting here is it's doing the two simultaneously, but also with this patent, it's saying you could choose portions of the sensor. So like doing a global shutter on part of it and a rolling shutter on other parts of it. And I'm trying to think of like what practical applications this would actually be useful for. What I could really see is if it captured both simultaneously and it's like, look, we've got fast motion in this part of the frame, we're going to use the global shutter information from that so we don't get any kind of weird banding or rolling shutter artifact. The rest of the image captured with the rolling shutter, so it's going to have less noise, more dynamic range, something like that. I could see that possibly being how this works, but looking at the patent, it seems like it's like, larger areas of it. So maybe you're like the pictures mound gets captured with the global shutter and then everything else with the rolling, something like that. But it just seems like very unintuitive. So I'm both excited and very confused by this patent.
Yeah, I wonder if it would even, again, like be more processing work to have to manage that, slowing the camera down that way. I think what their one idea is that if you use global shutter for certain areas where maybe your autofocusing point is, you'll get more calculations and quicker calculations. And so it could enhance autofocus speed and capability. Yeah, it's very. It also could just be a patent that they're locking down so that they lock it down, right? And it'll never actually see the light of day, and it's never going to happen. I could certainly see Nikon wanting to make just an all global shutter camera like Sony has, and maybe start competing in that arena. But yeah.
Well, maybe now that they own Red, Red is like, hey, you know what you could do is just become a patent troll. That's a great way to do things. Yeah. And maybe Nikon's just like, yeah, man, let's just lock down some weird patents as quick as possible. Worked for Red.
Well, for what it's worth, Nikon has a couple of patents related to this, and it did file one prior to its acquisition of Red. So it's been thinking about this combo global rolling shutter thing for a little while now, but there's nothing to say that you're not wrong, Jordan. Tom, any thoughts on this?
Honestly, I think, unfortunately, I'm still relatively new to the YouTube world in terms of getting hold of stuff. So I unfortunately haven't actually tested any cameras with any sort of global shutter. So I'm just sat here going, cool, that sounds good. Hopefully one day I'll try that out. But I mean, it sounds like a good idea in principle. But who knows? I guess, like you said, time will tell, right? We'll see whether that's actually something that comes out and is useful. And I think the biggest thing with photography is that, or cameras and digital cameras, there's always a compromise. So even if this sounds like the holy grail of something, no, I guarantee there'll be some sort of compromise, whether it's going to cost a fortune or, I don't know, it decides to kick you in the balls every time you take a photo just because it has to pay that penance somehow.
That was the compromise.
That's it. That's all it could do.
Physical pain. It exchanges
on the
performance.
All right, moving on from physical pain caused by your camera. Fujifilm announced several video-focused updates for a group of its cameras, as well as another X Summit. This will be the third one this year. It's going to host in this month, October. What it's going to do is it's adding a host of video upgrades to the XH2S, the XH2, and the GFX 100 II. These will improve subject tracking and face-eye detection performance and stability during video recording for these three cameras, all of which are considered flagships in the lineup. It's also going to add F-Log 2C, which promises a wider color gamut. These are all like Jordan things. Jordan?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would like to see the Fujifilm autofocus is, for the kind of stuff we're doing right now, actually pretty solid. But as soon as you start getting multiple subjects, it does get confused. So any improvements to just make it a little bit stickier, I think will make a big deal. And the XH2S is going to get tap to track now, which was weirdly missing from their video-centric camera. And it's just an intuitive way of selecting your subject. Basic cameras have had it now for a decade, so it's nice to see Fujifilm embracing that. I'm curious about the F-Log 2C because we were commenting when F-Log 2 was introduced, that's weird. It's not actually using the whole waveform here. There was actually room within that format for it to grow as camera sensors got better down the road. And now they're expanding the gamut, and I'm assuming keeping kind of the same dynamic range capability on it. So I don't feel like that was really the limitation with F-Log 2. I found it extremely gradable, but I'm looking forward to playing with it. It's just frustrating because now we're waiting for another whole batch of LUTs that'll be compatible with this slightly wider color gamut version. So having F-Log 2 introduced so recently, I kind of wish that the wider gamut was just included there in the first place. It'll make things less confusing.
Tom, anything?
This is kind of a little bit out of my remit. I mean, as much as I do video work, again, I do the flat profile thing and then slap a LUT on it and go, cool, I've just reverted what the camera could have done for me, but at least I feel
works
professional
99%
now.
of the time.
I feel like I'm a real videographer now. I'm more of a photographer, so I'm going to leave that over to Jordan and go, yeah, what he said.
Well,
I do the exact same thing. Just flat. You know what? I shoot 709 most of the time. I'm like, not direct sunlight, 709 it. Forget it. Let's just be done with it. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, the second half of this story is that there is another X Summit, which means Fujifilm tends to do a big dump. They don't do typically, unless it's an Instax camera. They dump a bunch of products a couple times a year. This will be the third time this year. I'm curious what listeners would like to see from Fujifilm, what they think they might get at this X Summit. So
the rumor sites are going wild with Fujifilm using a sensor type they've never used before. And we know nothing. I'm very curious, but there's a lot of debate over there. Who knows? I don't know.
I don't know.
I'd like to hear what you guys want to, what listeners want to find.
The listeners, and Tom, do you think Fujifilm's ever going to make a full frame chip?
I don't.
Your name's
I
not
don't
Tom.
think so. I don't think so, and I don't necessarily think they need to. I kind of respect Fujifilm for doing the whole do something different. They're trying for the smaller cameras, stick to APS-C. For the big boy serious cameras, let's go medium format and own that. I kind of respect that, and it also, I guess, makes a bit of a mess of all their lenses because then they've got to start again, sort of thing. I don't know. I don't think so. I wouldn't put my money on it.
All right. Well, last story of the week. This is kind of just I wanted to cover it because it's weird and messy, and I don't know what to make of this.
Before you get started here, Jaron, I just want to know who came up with the title for this. Was this you or Jeremy?
This is Jeremy.
Suspicions.
Entirely Jeremy.
Yeah. Sounded very much like Jeremy. What is the headline of this PetaPixel article, Jaron?
Amid kerfuffle, former paper shoot camera distributor launches a competing toy camera. So, for anyone who doesn't know what paper shoot is, a while ago, they created this very thin, it looks like a piece of paper, digital camera that has an 18 megapixel sensor for $125. So that's the current one. They had one a decade ago, but they've been iterating on it. Well, apparently, Papershoot, which is based in Taiwan, has distributor agreements with global companies, and they had one in North America, but they started to get into some sort of disagreement with that one.
A kerfuffle,
one might say.
Yeah.
And now that company sort of spun off and is now releasing a competing product. They renamed themselves Cappy Camera, and they are basically
we're missing the R.
Yeah, that was one of the comments. Cappy Camera is basically saying that they were done dirty by the parent company, Papershoot, and Papershoot's like, no, they just sort of ran off with our thing. Well, it's kind of hard to not believe Papershoot in this case, because Cappy Camera is releasing their competing product very quickly after the fallout with the parent company, Papershoot. So it just looks like they were working on this competing product while selling the product. It's hard to say. This all sucks for them. Yeah. I don't know who's buying these, but clearly there's a market for it.
Have any of you guys tried it? I haven't tried. Has anybody here tried any of these paper cameras?
No. I've tried similar ones. So I tried I say similar. I mean, I'm going to put it in the net of disposable cameras. I tried the Camp Snap camera, which went viral on Instagram a while back. I was wildly underwhelmed, to be polite. I like the idea, and I think the concept of that was to be aimed at kids, to get them, just so they can take it away when they go to summer camp and stuff. I get that, but for a photographer, it's probably not really suited, which is fair enough. I was thinking about this the other day, and I was like, I like the appeal of this. I like the appeal of having a small camera that's like a disposable camera. But then I'm like, okay, well, I kind of want different color grades on it, which is what these cameras are doing, admittedly. And then I'm like, but then it's just another thing to carry around. It'd be better if you had it on your phone. And I'm like, hang on, this was Instagram however many years ago. We've just gone full circle. Why don't we just have a better set of filters on your phone and have that as an app? I don't know. That seems better. So I don't know. I feel like I kind of want a camera like this, but for me personally, I'd like to have more physical buttons and dials on it, and then you start getting down the road of it being more expensive, and then it kind of defeats the purpose. So I see the appeal, but I don't think anyone's perfectly nailed it yet.
There is one other news story that I want to touch on very quickly. Some of our audience, it's not on the schedule, but some of our audience might not know that today is Chris Niccolls' birthday. It is his actual birthday at this moment. And,
but it won't be when you watch this episode.
No. It'll have already happened. And we won't know exactly what played out. But Chris is generally in his basement, but while renovations are going on, he finds himself in his living room there with quick access to the front door, I believe. So there should be something there for you or coming. I don't know. Just shout for your wife or something.
The doorbell did actually honestly just rang.
Okay,
which
you
is
should
weird.
go investigate that.
Go.
Yeah, but no, I don't think it's. I think it's because. So, are you talking about your lovely wife, Jordan?
No, not at all.
Oh, what?
Yeah, just shout for your wife. She'll know what's up.
She's outside with the dog.
Oh, okay.
I'm gonna go look. It's weird and unprofessional. I'm gonna leave my. Everybody can look at my grapefruit plant.
Yes.
There's some sort of nefarious plan going on here. Oh, look at that!
All right, for the listeners, why don't you go ahead and say what you got?
I got a happy birthday balloon, which I've always wanted. This is what I want. Thank you.
Put it in the background. Yeah. Perfect. There's a disappointing hand dropping in other.
And there's this happy birthday thing. My wife is scrambling all over the place, and vanilla cake. Thank you very much. And a fork. Look at that. Oh. You guys are all liars. You're all deceptive. You're all deceptive, sneaky sneaks.
So next time there's a video topic or something that you have no interest in contributing, just raise a hand and you can eat your fruit flan cake. Oh.
That was wonderful. It was very lovely. Oh, very lovely.
Well,
maybe this is one episode to watch on YouTube, I suspect.
Thank you very much. That's very sweet of all of you for conspiring to put a smile on my face. I'm going to eat my cake while we do this talk.
There's also one more
gotta
surprise
admit, you seem split between annoyed and delighted right now.
Wait, what's the surprise, Tom?
There's one more surprise, which we didn't rehearse, but basically the whole reason why I'm on this podcast is for your birthday, Chris. They asked for a British strippogram. So for those on YouTube, for one night, I'm joking.
Take it off.
Nobody wants to see that. I've got my macro lens attached.
It's the thought that counts. Thank you for potentially getting naked on public TV for me. Thank you, everybody. I appreciate it. Look at that nice cake. I'm going to eat it. I'm going to eat it while you guys talk.
Okay. Well, while you unpackage that,
away from the mic.
I will segue.
The only reason I mentioned your wife, Jordan, is because she also dropped off a present this morning, which was very sweet from you guys. So thank you for that.
Oh, I'm aware.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I know. Okay.
All right. Well, Chris, why don't you get into your cake, and I'll introduce this topic. And you're actually going last in this group, so you've got plenty of time.
Oh, there you go. Okay.
So what we're going to do is we're going to talk about if every manufacturer that we can think of that we want to talk about, if every manufacturer was going to remake a fixed lensed compact camera, what would we want to see from them? And so we've broken this up. All of us have 3 manufacturers that we've picked. Tom, you're going to kick us off, and you're going to go with the one that is already doing a great job, but you're going to give us your pick for Fujifilm. If they could remake your preferred fixed lens compact, what would it be?
Yeah, so funny enough, we already spoke about it at the beginning, really. I would like to see a follow-up to the X10, and I know they obviously did various ones after that, but they kind of screwed up the numbering system and stuff. I think go back to basics with the X10, small, pocket-sized, like with a decent zoom range, or even they could do a Ricoh and offer different versions with slightly different lenses. Maybe do one with a zoom, one with a 35mm equivalent. That would be cool. But small, pocketable. I could live without an EVF if I had to, if it made it smaller. But that would be my dream. If they'd bring back the double-digit X range, that'd be cool.
Well, if there's any manufacturer who's going to do anything like this, it's probably Fujifilm, because they've already proven that they can do it.
Well, and they also had that X70, which was like a 28 millimeter, really compact, with some of the worst autofocus we ever tested. But yeah, I absolutely agree. I want to see like a variety of focal lengths. That'd be cool.
Yeah.
I'm next, and I'm going to go with another obvious one, just to get this out of the way. I took OM System, and this is the one that we've seen the most requests for, the one that all 3 of us have already said, please do this. I looked the folks from OM System dead into the windows of their soul, and I told them to do this. And they still haven't, but we'll see. I want a Pen F, either the one that is modeled after the half frame from way back when, or the mirrorless Micro Four Thirds one that they had for the longest time, or a combination of those 2 cameras, but with a fixed lens instead. You can keep the Micro Four Thirds sensor. That's absolutely fine. I just desperately want this, and I know there are multiple listeners that want this too. I get an email occasionally asking when is the Pen F coming back, and I have to tell them I don't know, and I have already expressed to them in person that this needs to exist, and so far no dice. But I think this would sell exceptionally well, especially in the market now. Just weld a lens onto the front of that. I would personally like a 35 equivalent, but I'm happy if it was a 40, if it was a 28, those would be fine too. 30, literally anything. Just like
the lens,
honestly,
not the cake.
Anything.
The cake is great.
Oh, good. So next up is Jordan.
Which one am I doing first? Or is it up to me?
It's up to you. You've got 3 on here on the list. You can pick
Okay,
of these.
I'm going to go upmarket a little bit, and this is kind of a no-brainer, I think, for Hasselblad, who now are owned by DJI. They've got access to a lot of really cool technology, but what I would love to see from them is bring back the X-Pan, and I don't think this has to be exactly the same format as the previous X-Pan, and that was an interchangeable lens, wide format film camera, which produce beautiful images and still sell for like an incredibly high price right now. It's such a unique shooting experience. But I do think ultra wide is one thing where you could get away with a fixed lens for it, something like height wise equivalent to a 24. But what I would pitch is they don't have to go to like multiple full frame sensors is going to be very difficult. I actually think they could really do this with 3 APS-C sensors. So do
Just
like a 24 by
side by
72, just stick them all side by side like what Arri does with their video sensors. And then the other nice thing with that is if you go with a fixed lens, you could do an optical viewfinder. Like ideally, I'd want something like a Fujifilm with overlays on it, that kind of digital overlay. But if not, because it is a fixed lens, you could really try and recapture that X-Pan shooting experience. And basically, it's not a ton of R&D aside from designing a new lens for that. So I think that would be super cool, carry on the legacy of the X-Pan name.
That would be wildly expensive. Like,
Make Jeff Bridges do it.
Well,
Yes. We'll bully him into it.
well, what do you think that would cost, Jordan? What would you expect to see that on the market for sale for?
So if it's 3 APS-C sensors, I'm pitching it as like Leica Q pricing, is kind of like that $6,000 US. It's not going to be cheap. It's not going to be accessible for everybody, but it's still going to be less than, the wafers for those big medium format cameras. Yeah, it's going to be upmarket. And I don't think Hasselblad would ever make a really affordable camera. It's not what their branding is all about. But I've always said, if you give me a completely unique shooting experience, charge what you want. That's why I don't have an issue with like
You've
Leica
always
M,
said that?
the Q.
He's never
I've always said that. I say that when I talk about Leica all the time.
Charge what you want. Yeah, but you won't buy it.
That's my issue with like the
You can't
SL
afford
series because they're very similar to a mirrorless camera. But if you give me something that no one else is doing, then charge what you want.
All right,
My turn.
Chris. Cake mouth. What do you got?
Speaking of the Leica Q series, and this will never get made. So for me, this is more of a fantastical choice. It's never going to get made. I know it won't. The Leica Q3 is a nice platform. I'm not like massively in love with it the way that you guys are. Yeah, your love for it is
and I'm not even eating
obscene.
cake.
Yeah, it's unconditional. It's ridiculous. But, it's a nice platform. But what I would love to see is a telephoto fixed lens camera. And I get that that's not very practical. Well, I think it is, but I don't think the world does. They always insist on 35s because they're stupid. And I want like a Q3 75 mil f2. I think that would be perfect. So
Okay, so not like a huge telephoto.
No.
You're just like portrait range.
yeah, come on, what, like 300 mil fixed lens? That would be ridiculous.
I was curious.
No, but here's the thing. In all seriousness, when I'm walking the streets as a prostitute doing my job, I just feel like it'd be really nice to have a 75 mil. I actually find in a lot of cases, I prefer that field of view. It almost feels more normal than a normal lens in a lot of cases. And I like the extra reach and I like the compression. And yes, you could do portraits of people on the street and that would be fantastic as well. And so I would love to see it, especially now that we have a wide angle Q and now like a normalish Q. It'd be nice to then have like a 75 mil Q. That would be a dream. I would I would love that. Carry a 28 mil, carry 75 mil. That's all I would need. 2 cameras, double fisting, pop, pop, pop.
You were saying this desire while we were walking around Carmel.
Yeah.
You were like, I wish this was longer, which is the opposite of what I say about a fixed lens camera.
I know, yeah. And I get that you could then crop tighter if you wanted to. I doubt I would often, but I just love that 75 mil look. And I know that Leica make a beautiful 75 mil optical formula. They could just put that right in there. Done deal.
Scoosh it on.
Yeah.
All right, Tom, we've looped back to you. You selected Pentax.
Yes.
Yeah, Pentax. So I would like to see a follow-up to the MX1 from 2013. It was that 12 megapixel compact camera. I reviewed it on my channel. So I used to work in my previous life. I used to work Yeah, that's it. The brick, the retro brick. It looks great from the front, and then you turn it around, you're like, oh, Jesus Christ, what have they done to that? So basically, it was great in idea. In principle, it was good. And I loved the fact it was like a brass top and it could wear away and stuff like that. In a previous life, I used to work for a photography magazine, and that was one of the first cameras I reviewed. And I really liked it. And it was when, so I'd like to see a revamp of that. Probably this time with an EVF on the top. So I think the thing they screwed up with the design, well, one of many things they screwed up with the design, is that they tried to model it on the MX film cameras, but then they left like a gap on the top plate where an EVF could perfectly sit, which would then make it look even closer to the film cameras, but they still chose not to include an EVF for some reason. So I'd like to see it with an EVF and a dramatically restyled back, because that was just hideous. But everything else fundamentally was there. The front design looked great. Yeah, I'd love to see that. Pentax, please, come back to us.
That's a good pick. I would love to see that too. I don't know. Pentax doesn't make new things very often anymore, which is sad. But
it's tough. They ventured in. They ventured in with that KO1, and they were like, "Oh, that hurt. That was a bad spanking, and we'll never do that again."
That was 12 years ago. They should be recovered from that bad spanking.
Childhood trauma can
over
lie.
a decade later. Chris did review that MX1. I almost completely forgot about that until you brought it up. So maybe I'll hit Jaron with some of those video files. He can throw it up. Because I don't know how many people actually remember that camera.
No,
I certainly didn't. All right, so I'm up next, and my selection was Canon because I'm a Canon guy. Love Canon, using Canon right now. And I think like the easy, everyone's going to say, oh, just remake the AE1 and just make that fix. No, I want the Auto Boy. Give me the AF35M from 1979. It's a little boxy.
It's my birthday.
Yeah. Okay. Well, how fitting. This has like this weird like flash attachment that you can stick on the side if you want to. No, I don't want that. I just want this to be a simple point and shoot style. The original had like a 38 millimeter lens. I would go a little wider than that, but Chris's favorite focal length would be my choice. But I could see a boxy, neat little compact camera like this, with autofocus, of course, because it's the Auto Boy. You got to have autofocus on it. I think this would be a fun little camera that Canon could point back to, because this was like their first autofocus, like compact point and shoot like this. It came in response to, I think, like Minolta did something. So like this would be a pretty nice heritage thing to go after, like, revisiting something that meant a lot to them historically. And I think it's a neat looking camera that you just don't see cameras that look like this anymore.
What format would you want this to be, Jaron? Like a point and shoot kind of sensor, or like a Type 1?
No,
what do you think?
As far as like the smallest I'm willing to go on sensors these days, when you have this much fixed lens and you can build around it, is Micro Four Thirds. So I would expect APS-C for this. I'd be perfectly happy with APS-C on this. I think Canon makes good APS-C sensors. They can use an old APS-C optic that they've already created. They could remake, you just use the formula, but then give it a leaf shutter or whatever they need to for this. I think it could be done. You got to put image stabilization in it too. Just look at what Fujifilm did and just copy that and put it in this body. And give me
it's crazy. Canon doesn't embrace their heritage ever.
They have never done it. No, it's super strange.
It's scared.
Yeah, they, instead of embracing their heritage, they make cameras that look horrible. What was that? It was a camcorder from like the mid 2010s.
Oh, the XC10. Worst camera, worst photo camera, worst lens of the year.
Horrible.
Yeah,
horrible looking thing. They'll make that, but they won't make a camera that embraces something that looked cool in the past. I don't know. It's just silly. Jordan, you're up.
Madness.
Which of the next two do you want that you've selected?
We've just been kind of hanging out at the wide angle a little bit. Chris deviated from us from that a little bit. But I want to talk about fixed lens super zooms because this is something where a smaller sensor can actually be a real benefit. And going way back, there was a camera I absolutely adored. It was the Sony RX10 II. And this had a Type 1 sensor, but a 24 to 200 f2.8 constant zoom lens on it, with a built-in ND filter, electronic viewfinder, fully articulating screen. Like, this thing was a really interesting body. And since then, Sony kept the RX10 series going, but they went to a variable aperture lens with a lot more reach, a 24 to 600. But I want that original, if not the original lens, that original focal length to come back into a fixed lens camera, because it was absolutely brilliant for video, and it was still quite compact. Where you look at the RX10, 3 and 4, they're pretty big cameras.
I don't know. This camera's kind of big too.
Yeah, it is.
So you just want a super zoom camera.
You just want a used RX10 Mark II. So
No,
somebody,
not at all.
you can go on KH.com and buy one of those, and your dreams will come true.
No, so Sony have made huge advancements since that happened. This came out before real-time tracking was even a thing. It had a garbage W battery. The viewfinder, I believe, was a 1.44 million dot. So all of this stuff, Sony have made huge strides and all of that. The ergonomics were very bad and plasticky. Now Sony have really nice dials on a lot of their cameras. So I think you update those 4 things, keep a similar focal range on the lens, and now we've got stacked Type 1 sensors. So this thing could be a lot faster shooting. The video capabilities could be substantially better. The old one just shot like 8-bit video. There's so much room for dramatic improvement with this camera. And I do hear all the time, like, you know, why are people pushing so much for longer lenses on their smartphones? It's the one thing that our smartphones do badly. So if you want to shoot a lot with a long zoom, then moving to a dedicated camera does make real sense. And this would do awesome double duty for like telephoto shooting as well as video recording. So RX10 II Mark II. That's what I want it to be called. It'll make no damn sense whatsoever. Great product. Chris is shaking his head furiously if you're just listening.
Yeah, I've got a better idea. So I think, you know, like right now in the market, people are buying compact, vintage point-and-shoot digital cameras like crazy, spending way more money than they should on them. I mean, these are cameras that used to be $100, $50 in a bargain bin, and all of a sudden they're cool again. But I think that there's a real market for very classy, beautiful cameras to come back. You know, and there's some really nice designs. I mean, I'm not talking like plastic clamshell cover stuff. I'm talking like, you know, the Contax T series. I'm talking like the Konica 35s, like the RFs. There's beautiful cameras, but one that I really love that's maybe not that well known, Nikon. Nikon made the 35 Ti and the 28 Ti. They're beautiful designs, gorgeous. And there's nothing like pressure gauge style.
It's so cool.
Gauges to show your exposures. So they got these really cool, like, you know, basically like a tachometer, you know, or a pressure gauge where it's like a little clock arm that moves up and down to show your apertures and settings. And it was sexy, sexy, sexy. The lenses are great. I mean, the 35 Ti can burn in hell, but the 28 Ti had a 28 millimeter lens, sharp, beautiful, very rare, very desirable. And I think if you stuck even just a very modest 24 megapixel full frame sensor into a small compact body like that, you know, there's like champagne titanium finish, gorgeous, put those pressure gauges on. The original ones were very much a luxury point and shoot. So I would like to see something that had maybe some more command dials, let you change aperture, shutter speed, ISO a little bit more. They were generally point and shoot cameras. But just to have that sexiness back, that classiness back, very compact design, I think that would be hot. I would love to see that.
All right.
I would be all over that.
Yeah. Analog dials, like and gauges. Beautiful.
Tom, your final selection, which is one I was not expecting to hear, so I'm excited to hear what your thoughts on this. Kodak.
Yeah, I've gone down the same sort of thinking. Yeah, I know, right? I've gone down the same sort of thinking as you, Chris. Like, I'm totally with you there with the pressure gauge and stuff like that. But with Kodak, I was like, they need to reclaim their heritage because it's all gone a bit wrong, to say the least. So I think what would be cool is they bring back the digital, make a digital vest pocket camera, like the one that's right behind your, I don't know if it's a Kodak right behind your head, Chris, but you've got a similar one. You know, the folding ones with the bellows, and then make it so that you have a medium format size sensor in the back. So yeah, there you go. So yeah, similar sort of thing to that. So you can have a medium format size sensor in your pocket and keep the bellows idea, which would be absolutely horrendous for dust, but who cares? Because how cool would that look? Keep it all very analog, fixed lens.
It'll look cool as hell.
Yeah, screw it. Who cares about practicality? Just, whatever. So, yeah, I'd love to see that. Completely impractical, I imagine, and I don't know even if that's like physically possible, but that's what I would like to see. And I'm sure it would cost a fortune as well if it had a medium format sensor in.
All our ideas will cost a fortune, by the way. Everybody listening, like, it'll be brutal. But that would be a cool idea. That's almost as cool as a digital TLR. I like that.
All right, so mine is one that I added in here because I realized everyone else had 3 except me. So I decided to go with Voigtlander because Chris has me thinking about Voigtlander. And I'm okay with one of 2 options from them. They haven't made cameras since film, but why can't we take a film design and turn it digital? And one that makes sense immediately because it was already fixed lens is the Bessa 3 667 medium format. It had an 80 millimeter f3.5 on it, and it has like a open door with a bellows lens in there that goes back to 120 film. And I'm thinking that can work quite well. It keeps the camera compact if you put just a medium format sensor back there. I think that could look really neat. I also am going to advocate for taking the R2 design, R2A, and pairing it with a lens they already make, the Color Scopar 28mm f2.8. And the Type 1 is the one I'm looking at because it's more compact and it looks more rangefindery. And I'm seeing this as a fixed lens rangefinder. And I would like to see that just on the body design that they already had. You can keep the dials and knobs all there, all the same ones. That's fine. Just make it digital. And I think this thing would be awesome. I want this.
Would you want that to be a real rangefinder or a rangefinder style? Like, would you want an EVF in that?
I think I'd like it to be a real rangefinder, but I would not complain if they're like, no, we didn't want to do that. It's going to have an EVF in there. Like, all right, fine. That doesn't bother me that much. Cool. That's my dream. I will never see it because I don't think Voigtlander wants to get into sensor work anymore, making processors and that sort of thing, which is a shame, but it's what I want. Jordan?
I'm going to go Panasonic, and they have quite a legacy of excellent fixed lens cameras. They basically invented the travel zoom category, but I'm going to go the opposite direction. They made an LX100 camera a little while back, which was a micro four thirds sensor that it didn't use all of. And this we recently saw kind of re-envisioned with the Leica Deluxe 8 that just came out. It was kind of a version of the LX100 too. But I want them to go a little different. I want them to keep that micro four thirds sensor in there, but let it start quite a bit wider. I think Panasonic would have a great opportunity to do this, and they're starting to, with things like this kit lens that just came out, become known for doing ultra wide to normal lenses. And I was thinking about Nikon's DL 18 to 50 compact that never actually came to market, an ultra wide to normal point and shoot. But I think an LX100 III with a 20 to 50 millimeter lens would make a ton of sense. Like a little pocket landscape camera, micro four thirds would give you still some nice dynamic range with that, but put a strong ND filter in it, like a 5-stop or something like that. So you could actually do like waterfall shots and stuff with a built-in ND filter, just like a compact camera with good image quality that's custom built for landscape. I think that would be really, really cool and could fetch, again, like a premium price, like $1,500, I think would be justified for something like that.
Alrighty.
Chris, you've got a little cake on your mustache.
Do I have cake on my mustache? Oh, sorry. More.
Don't eat on mic. No, God. Some people will just unsubscribe immediately.
It's the most impressive cake eating I've ever seen, I've got to say, Chris. The mouthfuls you are taking, honestly, unreal. 10 out of 10, my friend. You need to tune into the YouTube channel just to watch the cake eating. I'm speechless. I'm speechless.
They said I had to. I think a lot of people are speechless right now. I'm being handed a paper towel. I don't think I need this. Anyways.
All right, Chris, finish us out. What's the last one?
Yeah, I'm going to finish this out. So I'm going to choose a camera that actually might happen because, I'm not saying your ideas aren't going to happen. Mine certainly probably won't. Like a Leica Q3 75mm, forget it. But I would love to see a rebirth of the Sigma DP Merrill series. And this is a tough one because it's one of these camera companies. They make beautiful optics. They have dabbled in this in the past, but their designs have always been lacking in some really weird ways. So first off, we got to ditch the Foveon sensor. I know we even did a news story about this last year about the idea that maybe Foveon's going to come and forget it. Like, it's done. Modern sensor technology is amazing. It's come a long way. Just put a regular sensor in there. Stick with the 30mm f2.8. That's a great lens to start. Maybe in the future you could make some more series. And all it has to do, I mean, the battery life has to last longer than 36 shots. That would be ideal. I mean, the Merrills were compact little cameras, very classic Sigma design, boxy, kind of boring, but they worked. They actually weren't that bad to handle. That could be improved a little bit, but yeah, like give us something small, compact, more modernized, better battery life, and make it something that we can hold. I mean, the Quattro was just obscene. That was, I don't know whose hand that was made for. I know a lot of people disagree with me because they have weird hands, obviously. So come back with there you go. Tom loves the Quattro. It's his favorite. I like it if I hold it sideways like this with the lens going out to the left. Then it's quite I mean, yeah, be conservative with your design, Sigma. If you're going to do a weird grip, I can't stop you. But bring back the DP Merrill, but stop trying to do the Foveon and the quirky stuff and make it a little bit more mainstream. And I think a lot of people would appreciate seeing a Sigma camera again on the market, especially because their optics are really killing it right now. They're very highly respected, so I think it'd be a good time for that.
Did the DP3 have Foveon?
Yes. Oh, everything was Foveon.
So that explains why it's a 15 megapixel sensor, but it's actually a 45.
Yeah.
Somewhere in there.
Yeah, I'm looking for the 3 layers.
Chris, if you want one, KEH has one. Only one. In excellent.
$10?
$590.
That's actually less than I thought it would be. But no, I don't want one. They're almost impossible to hold.
It does look like you're holding a brick.
And they're way longer than they need to be. Like, that it's like shaped like an X-Pan, on that topic.
The Quattro,
Yeah, they're like super long. The DP Merrills were nice. They're compact little squares. Put a little grip on that. That'd be cool. Like, they were great. Like, the beautiful thing about them was they took beautiful photos for the time, right? And you could have this like pocket-sized camera to go out and shoot stunning landscapes with. Like, it was pretty amazing. But just rejig it so it's a bit more useful. Obviously, a better battery life, 36 shots. It was like shooting a roll of film. It was obscene. You were changing, you were literally changing batteries like you would change 35mm film rolls. But I would like to see that. So interesting ideas. Maybe some of our ideas will be possible. Obviously, a lot of them are just ridiculous. But viewers at home, leave your comments below. Let us know.
What do you want to see? We'll read the comments. We want to know what you guys would like to see in a fixed lens camera. It does not have to be from any of the brands we picked. It could be a different brand. You could come out of left field if you want to. Maybe you'll say like Tamron should make one. I don't know. Maybe. Let us know. We'll take a look at those and we'll talk and see if we hear any that are really enticing to us. We'll bring them up next week. And with that, though, we're going to move on to What Have You Been Up To? This is the segment where we let guests tell us what they've been up to, toot their horn a little bit, tell us a little bit about what projects they're working on, what people should get excited for. So that means, Tom, you get to tell us what you're working on, what people should pay attention to. What are you excited about?
Sure. I mean, other than moving to a different continent, that's taken up a lot of time, surprisingly. And I mean, I was talking to Chris the other day about this. Honestly, I expected moving to Canada to be just like better UK. Like, things are just the same, but better landscapes. But it's not. It's not like that. Everything's different. And I've had to learn that the hard way. I just had to buy winter tires. I didn't know that was a thing. I'm learning all the time. So other than that, and everyone I speak to, they're like, how are you enjoying Canada? And I'm like, yeah, loving it. They're like, wait until the winter comes. And like and then they smile again because they're Canadian, and then they're really friendly. And I'm like, Jesus. So I'm bracing myself for this cataclysmic event that's going to happen at some point. But other than balancing life stuff, just reviewing more old cameras, really. Funny enough, the Quattro has been on my list for a long time, but you just can't get hold of them. They're so expensive. So yeah, I'm trying to do different things.
They're hard to hold.
Yeah, well, not for me. When you're 6'8" and got
you literally can't get a hold on them. Yeah.
That's it. Yeah, exactly. I mean, I kind of just doing that. Really, I haven't really got anything else to plug. Do you know what? I watched the episode with Kai, and he was exactly the same. And I was like, I'm going to be that other British guy who just doesn't have anything to plug. So I'm just me making videos. I have nothing to plug.
Well, we'll link to your YouTube channel in the description below for anyone who wants to see what he's up to. Chris, it's your birthday, and you're in a different position than you typically are. If you want to cover that at all.
So the podcasting space was in the basement. I'm getting the basement redone, so all the workers have been going in, framing's up, electrical's done, waiting for inspections. I think it's going to work out really well. It'll be a nice new space to work in. It's going to look totally different. It's not going to be sort of the, Twitch streamer kind of thing that I had going on before. It'll be more like man cave look. But for the time being, until that's all done, I'm here on the couch with a birthday cake, and I'm using my jet engine laptop again, my gaming Gigabyte Aero, because all the other computer stuff's been put away, and so I hope that's not cutting through the mic. I'm sure it is, and it's probably getting really hot. And I'm sure it's going to be really loud and echoey, and I'm sorry about that. Otherwise, what did I do? I went out on a date with Jordan's dad. That was great. We always have a great time. Yeah. He even gets a little bit romantic. He's a lovely man, very attractive.
Excuse me?
We went pike fishing. And we made a teenager watch us, and it was great. We had a great time. We caught so many fish. It was wonderful. Why are you looking at me like that, Jordan? Your dad and I have a very pure love. It was wonderful. So yeah, great day all together.
Your dad
Lots
fish
of fish.
Or something, Jordan? He must
incredible day.
Yeah, they went fishing together. But I hate this.
He's a human being too. He has feelings.
Okay, well then segue us off, Jordan. What have you been up to?
I do this very rarely, but I make exceptions when a new Zelda game comes out. I'm playing a video game again.
Oh, you're playing the
so
Zelda
I did get that new Zelda Echoes of Wisdom, and it slaps all night long. It's super fun. I can see online a bunch of hardcore gamers are very bent out of shape about this. It might just be because a woman is the lead protagonist in this, which always seems to lead to a kerfuffle, as Jeremy Gray would say. But it's super fun. Basically, instead of fighting everything, you just summon other things to do the fighting for you. But lots of classic Zelda puzzles. It's top-down. It feels very much like games from my childhood, and I'm having a really good time with it. So shut up, Internet. This game rules.
I'll go last. I went to the Japanese Garden, Portland Japanese Garden, this past weekend, and I went and looked around. I was hoping to see some fall color. We're not there yet. I'm going to go back in like 3 weeks, I think is when I'm going to see it again, and I'm going to shoot that. I brought both of my film cameras, actually. I brought the Bessa, and I brought my Nikon F, and I was shooting one in color and one in black and white. Mostly I wanted to get the black and white out of the Bessa so I could put some Ektar in there for an upcoming trip that we'll talk about eventually. But it was fun. But I was sitting having tea, and the weather was actually very nice. So we sat outside, which is rare. There's only like 2 or 3 tables out there, and I watched as we're members, so we had member hours. So we were sitting at the tea house, and I watched general admission come in, and I
commoners.
The riffraff.
Losers.
The riffraff.
I could not help but notice what cameras were in people's hands as they came in, because it is a very popular photography spot, as Chris will tell you. And I was shocked. I didn't see a single Canon camera for the first time ever. Usually it's a Canon DSLR with the stock strap around it that all the Asian dads have. But this time it was basically entirely Nikon. I saw I think 6 or 7 Z8s. And then
we got him, Tom. We got him. He's saying Z all the time now. That's great.
Part of the Commonwealth.
Commonwealth.
Cue the national anthem.
I can't play that. In the gift shop, I noticed that there was a Q3 original around some nice man's shoulder, and I complimented him on it. And then one Fujifilm I saw. I couldn't tell what it was too far away, but I thought that was really interesting that Nikon was the number one camera I saw there in my time of maybe just about an hour, which I thought was neat. I hadn't seen that before. So
very cool.
Okay, we're going to move on to tech support, of which we have many. We're going to start with a speak pipe from John Baker.
Hi, all. This is John Baker from Louisville, Kentucky, and I have a question about taking selfies with your digital camera. So, I'm sure I'm not the only one who's experienced this, but on countless occasions I've been hiking or traveling with a group, and we finally arrive somewhere, and the whole time I've been taking pictures and carrying along my expensive and heavy photography equipment. But by the time we arrive, someone shoots a selfie, and the composition is great. Everyone is smiling very casually, and it's a great photo until you blow it up and you realize that the small sensor of our cell phone cameras just doesn't compare to our professional cameras. However, when I've tried to take selfies, I have a A7R5 and a 24 G Master lens, and when I've tried to do that, I just haven't been able to do it effectively, where it either comes across awkwardly or I have to set a timer in order to get the camera to focus properly. So I'm just wondering if you have any tips on how to take selfies with a camera. I wish that the focus hold button could also autofocus and use the shutter as well. However, I can't seem to get that to work on my camera. So do you have any tips for taking selfies with professional cameras? Anyway, thank you so much.
Don't do it. We don't do it. I don't have any tips because I wouldn't do it. And I get that you want to, and I get the image quality to be nice. Like, the only thing I would suggest is maybe go back to old school tripod self timer. You know, if you're going to have that gear with you, and then at least you don't get that like, weird angle that we're all used to. You can actually do like a nice proper group photo, but I don't know. They're not made for it.
We do actually do this once in a while when Chris and I need to both be in a thumbnail and we're out there. So we do put it on
under duress.
I'm not happy about it, but we do it. So there we do 10-second timer with 3 exposures, so you can pick. But the biggest piece of advice, I see this all the time when people use professional high-end gear, is if you're shooting a group shot close up, for the love of God, stop down. Like if you're using a 24-1.4 to shoot a group, you might be like, I paid for 1.4, I'm going to use it. And that is going to lead to huge issues. So you know what? If you got the light for it, just stop it down to f16. You're going to get nice deep depth of field like your smartphone, but a much more detailed image. But yeah, it is always awkward with big cameras. That's kind of inherent to it.
We should do a video about like what's the easiest full frame mirrorless camera to do a selfie with. I think Sony would win. I think a Nikon Z8 would be very tricky. We should have put that in our rankings for our roundup. That should have been our 6th. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, which one? Yeah.
Tom, any input?
Yeah, I was going to say, they used to, but I can't think what camera it was. I've reviewed one recently that had wink shutter. So you literally just wink at the camera, which is ridiculous, but you wink at the camera and then it sets the 2-second delay and then it takes a bit. So, back in the day where everyone was like selfies became popular and then every camera was like, we need to have a selfie mode. People want to take pictures of themselves. So yeah, if you can get an older camera that has that might help. And I can't think, but there are some cameras, and you guys will be able to tell me about this.
I just had to Google it. The Wink self timer is a Canon feature.
No, I tell you what it was. It was an old Samsung. It was an old Samsung NX3000 that I reviewed recently. That's what it was. Wouldn't recommend buying that, maybe, but it's a bit outdated now. But yeah, that had it. But some of them have smile trigger and stuff, don't they? Still, maybe I can't think of any models off the top of my head, but that would definitely help.
Sony experimented with that, and then they realized the process didn't make anybody actually smile. They hated the whole thing, so they cut it out. But one thing that does occur to me, though, that might work well is a lot of the modern mirrorless cameras, you do have remote shooting with your phone, and that could be helpful. So you're actually doing both. You're doing like a selfie with your phone as the screen, lining up with the SLR, but then you can trigger with the phone. And so, that at least takes away the awkwardness of trying to hold the camera and fire it. You could hold the camera without worrying about the shutter and then use your phone as a remote shutter release. That could work really well.
Oh,
and then you can frame up properly.
So just so you know, like Canon in one camera model from 2012 did have the Wink self timer. It's the 520HS point and shoot. So Samsung came out after.
Bring the Wink back.
Apparently.
And stole it.
Make the wink great again.
Make cameras winky.
Okay.
Look what you started, John from Louisville. Oh.
The next one is an email from Tony. Hello, Chris, Jordan, and Jaron. I am a professional photographer working in Connecticut. I have been using digital cameras since the Nikon D1. I am currently using the best camera I have ever used, the Canon R3. As an event photographer, it does everything I could hope for with one exception: fill flash. Let's say, for example, I am shooting an event under a tent. It's bright and sunny outside, but dark under the tent. There's a group of people at the edge of the tent I want a photo of. They are facing to the inside of the tent. I set exposure for them, ISO 400 f4 1/200th. All good, I can see them, but a little pop of fill flash would help. I turn on my Godox V1, manual 1/120th power, and the viewfinder goes dark. It is showing exposure for the bright scene outside the tent. My subjects are now silhouettes. It's maddening. I get the reasoning here. When I'm doing headshots and flash inside and the exposure is ISO 200 f8 at 1/200th, I get a black frame. When flash is remote on the camera and turned on, it brightens the viewfinder and I can see my subject and the exposure is correct with flash settings. How can I keep the exposure simulation when flash is on? I have tried the optical viewfinder simulation, but I want to see the exposure simulation. I want to be able to get back to the standard operation I needed for studio work. Thanks very much. Sorry for the long explanation. It was very detailed. I hope that makes sense. Tony from New Haven.
Yeah. So, Tony, there's not much you can do. So I guess just to give a bit of context, I mean, obviously, when you have a backlit subject like that, but your subject's from the foreground, fill flash makes sense. The idea being that you would want to balance the exposure, the ambient exposure of the background, which is bright outside, use the flash then to expose for the subjects inside. And actually, most flashes are set for this. If the camera detects a flash, it will, generally speaking, automatically adjust its exposure to try to balance both. Therefore, your aperture and your shutter speed, your ISO, they're changing for that background. It's going now darker. That means your subjects are going to be in silhouette, and the idea is the flash is going to fill that in. That's a nice idea. So what can you do? Well, if you don't care about the background exposure as much and you really want to focus on being able to see the subjects like you did without the flash, you can manually set your aperture and your ISO to and your shutter speed for that matter, to what the original exposure was. The background's probably going to be blown out, but you'll see your subjects' faces, and then the flash will still fire. And it's not going to blow anything out. It's actually going to still do that fill quite nicely. But you're not getting the ideal dynamic range doing that. The other thing you can do is you can turn off the exposure simulation. And honestly, that's what we do when we use flashes. You turn off the exposure simulation so you can see your subjects given that the flash is firing and that the aperture, shutter speed, and ISO are changing. And I hope this makes sense. But just to give context for anybody who's using flash, you always got to remember that when you're firing an electronic flash, you're really dealing with two separate exposures. You've got your ambient exposure and you've got your flash exposure. And they share aperture and ISO. ISO and aperture are going to affect both of those equally. Shutter speed, however, isn't going to affect your flash. Your flash fires with its own shutter speed duration based on the exposure timing of that flash. The shutter speed is going to just affect your ambient light. And so you got to remember, you got these two exposures to balance, trying to get them to expose both at the same time. A camera can't do it because the flash isn't actually lighting up the subject until the time of the exposure. I hope that makes sense. So, yeah, turn exposure simulation off. It's gonna look appropriate, but you're not going to be able to see, any of like what the background's doing, what the flash is doing. Take your shot. That's just the way it is.
You mentioned the optical viewfinder simulation, which is actually better than just turning off the display because it'll actually use a wider dynamic range than a regular JPEG will. So it'll make it a little easier to see the bright highlights and the information in the shadows. But yeah, it's not representing what your actual output will be. And like Chris said, it's just because your camera doesn't know how much output the flash is actually going to kick out and what it's going to hit. There's no way for them to give you an accurate preview with the
There's no digital simulation to say, exactly, this is what the flash would look like, Yeah.
All right. Let's move. You guys cover that pretty well, so I'm going to move us on to a speak pipe from Dan Fiscus.
Hey guys, love the podcast. It's been keeping me great company as I travel this month. I have two questions. I'll try to keep it brief, but the first one requires a little bit of background. I've always been a camera enthusiast, but I've never had the means or the excuse to actually buy any gear for myself. I had a point and shoot I got in elementary school, and I kept it through high school, but I've used smartphones ever since. But I just got a new job and I got some travel plans for the summer. So I finally sprung and I got a Sony Alpha 6700 and I've had it for a few weeks. I'm pretty happy with it overall. The return window is closed, so it's a little late to ask, but the more I've dived into this hobby, the more I've heard about the benefits of full frame. And I'm wondering if I made a mistake. I do like shooting cityscapes and landscapes where detail can be beneficial, but it's also just a hobby for me. I'm not planning on doing anything professional. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. My second question is a little more quick. I just would love to know where I can find more helpful information about learning this hobby, especially editing. I kind of get lost every time I dump the photos on the computer and I just want to make some color corrections. So any advice would be appreciated. Thank you so much. Love what you guys do.
Yeah, I don't think that. No, because I mean, also ultimately, what matters is what you're happy with. If the camera is giving you results that you are happy with, don't worry about just keep getting better and better, right? It's kind of one of those things where you'll endlessly be chasing newer, better technology because there's always something bigger and better you could be getting, but it is kind of a slippery slope where you'll just spend more and more money always looking for that bigger and better thing. So I think ultimately for me, my advice would always be just stick with what you're happy with. If you're happy with the results that your camera is giving you, stick with that. And then I've totally forgotten what the second question is.
Where would you go, Tom, if you needed some more tips on your photo editing? Like, what's a good starting point for someone who doesn't really know what they're doing and just wants to make color corrections and try and get just a look that they're happy with?
So yeah, that's a good question. So obviously, I'm going to say YouTube is an endless resource. But what I found really useful personally when I first started out, and I didn't really know that much about color grading and stuff like that, is starting with presets. If you can buy, this is not a plug, by the way. This is what I should have plugged earlier because I do have presets for sale on tomcalton.com. But don't have to buy those. You can find any preset you like. But basically, you can find any preset. Find a landscape photographer that you like on YouTube, and 9 times out of 10 they'll probably have a preset available. Sometimes they offer them for free, and that will usually give you a good starting point. At the very least, what I used to do is get the presets, install them onto Lightroom, apply them to my images, and then just look through the settings and see what they've been dialed into. And then eventually, once you start using more and more presets, you kind of get a good idea of, oh, well, they've done this to the S-curve or whatever. Just analyzing what other people have done is a good way. But other than that, I would always turn to YouTube. There's a wealth of people who are insanely talented at color grading and know every corner of Lightroom. So that would be a brilliant place to start.
Great advice. Yeah.
The tricky thing with that is we just need to know what software you're using, because all of the online stuff is going to be like, hey, here's a basic workflow for Photoshop or Lightroom or Capture One, things like that. I don't find a lot of generalist, here's how to edit, because most people want to know how to do it within their specific software. So definitely just search for what you've got or the software you're interested in using, because there's free trials on all these things.
Do you guys have anything to add to Tom's excellent response to don't get gas, gear acquisition syndrome?
Yeah, Tom's response was good. I mean, the A6700 is a fantastic camera. The only thing I would add really goes with Tom in that modern sensors are really good. Like, I would absolutely be happy with the sensor, the 26 megapixel sensor, A6700, going around town, even in low light situations. Like, I really think we have to start letting go of this whole like, oh, you absolutely need this to get these shots. No, like 6700 will take great photos in low light. There's lots of great lenses. The autofocusing is dead simple, perfect and easy to use, very accurate, and it's small. And I think that's really important if you're going to go travel. Like, we travel with full frame cameras and medium format cameras all the time because it's for the particular video we're shooting. And so many of these times I'm like, I would love to just be taking a Micro Four Thirds or APS-C camera. It would make so much more sense for the compact nature. So no, but Tom's response was great.
Cool. All right. Next one is an email from Brett. I think Jordan's going to want this one. When do non-pros get to shoot in HDR? Cell phones shoot in HDR these days, but YouTube instruction for DaVinci tells me how to render my log footage into Rec 709. HDR looks amazing on my screen even after uploading it to YouTube, though. Thoughts on why 709 is still a thing in the world of XDR displays and laptops, OLED TVs? When should I change my approach?
I have a very simple answer for you, which is look at the comments when we publish HDR content. And it's a whole bunch of people being like, why are these shadows? This is underexposed. This is undersaturated. This looks like garbage. And then peppered in there like, oh, I watched this on my Mac display or my phone, and it looks great. Thanks for publishing in HDR. There's just a lack of general consumer awareness about these things at this point. And
it doesn't help that monitors will say HDR compatible,
and it's like 400.
And and HDR, I really think the HDR group needs to be like, you cannot be HDR if you're at 400, which is 400 nits. It's too low. The minimum for me is 600, ideally 800. So your screens need to be bright in order to actually do HDR correctly. But most televisions these days do that.
Yeah, if you do that, like not only for video, because I would say definitely they're ahead of things with filmmaking. Like now most streaming services will give you an HDR and an SDR version of their big budget films. And the HDR looks great. But photography very specifically is really lagging behind in this. And if you see a photo that is shot with a wide dynamic range, edited properly and displayed on something, it absolutely pops. And I think this is a huge part of when people are like, my big camera doesn't take pictures that look as nice as my iPhone. It's because the iPhone is shooting and displaying properly in HDR, and those highlights look incredible on it, and there's still lots of shadow information. So I think we're going to move in this direction. I'm actually hoping that the JPEG XL, if that catches on, will really help this quite a bit, because it does have a container for 10-bit HDR format that'll display it directly, but it's going to have to catch on more than it already has.
Legitimately, the problem is computers. When we look at our stats on YouTube, almost nobody's watching on a TV. A lot are on mobile, but a ton are on computers. And a lot of PCs, and even if you're using a Mac like I am with monitors designed for PC, all of these have just atrocious peak brightness. And most of these monitor companies are doing very little to push that. I will even say that Apple did not do enough with the studio display when it came to brightness. So I have a setup over here that every time Jordan uploads an HDR video, I test it on 3 displays simultaneously. I have the MacBook Pro display, which will do HDR correctly. I have the studio display, which will do it kind of correctly. It gets most of the way there. It looks fine. And then I have a Samsung display next to that where it looks like trash. So I can tell him what parts are broken. But it's like that Samsung display claims to be HDR compatible. Sure, it understands the signal, but it's not displaying it in a way that looks good. And this is unfortunately something that we can't fix until monitor companies all agree on something, or the HDR certification changes and they're forced to. But I doubt it, because these
it'll never happen.
It'll never happen. No.
So I mean, this is not a new thing. This is a tale as old as time. I mean, we had this way before HDR with photography, when we were dealing with SDR color spaces and Adobe RGB color spaces and ProPhoto color spaces. And the approach has always been you kind of have to support the lowest common denominator across all the display and printer devices, the myriad of products that you could buy in the market. I mean, the problem is there's too much choice. There's too many options, and there's no way to make a file that's going to look good on all of those options equally. So, yeah, we're still there.
Any thoughts on this, Tom?
Absolutely zero.
Awesome. We're going to move on then. The next one,
sRGB.
The next one is a speak pipe from Darren.
Hey guys, it's Darren here from Toronto. I'm a professional photographer, and I'm using Lightroom Classic on an Apple MacBook Air M1. So not the latest and greatest, but by no means an old computer. And I'm finding I'm having tons of slowdowns when using the develop module, going from one photo to the next, usually a cropping tool or copying, pasting an adjustment from the previous photos. At first, it runs smoothly and quick, and then about a third of the way through the edit, it starts to really slow down. I've tried many different things to solve the problem, such as keeping files locally, keeping files on an SSD externally, changing the cache levels, restarting, smart previews, standard previews, all sorts of different previews. Nothing seems to really solve the problem in totality. So I'm just curious if you guys have any recommendations. Is it the computer itself? I don't think it is, because when I start these edits, the computer, everything works perfectly fine, and just over time it slows down. Is it my catalog size? I do have large catalogs, but I feel like I've tried smaller catalogs too. Looking for any kind of advice. Is it just time to upgrade and get a new computer? I heard on your last Adobe podcast that a new computer really does work wonders with speed. So before I go and spend $4,000 or $5,000 on a new computer, maybe it's just a quick settings change. So looking for some not standard suggestions, because I've heard a lot of the standard suggestions. Thanks so much, guys.
Go, Jaron.
Yeah.
Go, Jaron. Go, Jaron.
So there are several things you can do that I don't think a lot of people do know about Lightroom, because reading this over again, it sounds like it's your cache. I think your cache is filling. So you can do a couple of things before I get to that. First, make sure that you've customized your graphics processing to use the GPU. So you have to go in your settings, and you can find in there, you'll see use your GPU. It'll do auto, but you can set that to manual and tell it to do it. The GPU in the original M1 processor is pretty good, so that should help. Then you want to increase your camera raw cache. That default is 5 gigs. You can push that to whatever you want. I recommend 50. That's why I think this is what's causing your problem if you're not doing this. 5 is too low. You can also do some other small things, like not a lot of, I don't know if it's still an issue, but for a while there, Lightroom was actually giving you performance based on the resolution you'd set, even if your resolution didn't match your display. So it'll penalize you if that's not correct. So if you go to catalog settings, file handling, and then make sure the standard preview size matches the longest edge of your actual display resolution. Otherwise, it might default to something that you can't even see. Like it'll go 4K even though your display is only 1080. It's particularly relevant if you're not using a 4K display. And then Lightroom may be generating standard previews that are larger than they need to be, and then hurting your performance as a result. There are other tips that we've covered in the past on PetaPixel that I've linked to in the video description that you can go check those out and make sure you've gone through all of those. If you've made all of these changes and something is still slow, I don't know what would be causing that, other than Lightroom can be kind of bad for some people.
Run clean my Mac.
Or run clean my Mac, as Jordan does all the time. Tom, do you have anything to add to that?
If you delete your porn stash, that usually speeds it up. I heard from a friend. I don't know. I wouldn't do that kind of filth, but I've heard that helps. Glad I could contribute.
Not worth it.
Next question.
All right, next one is an email from Nick. Hi guys, regular listener, first time emailer. I have a Fuji X-T5 and 4 lenses, 27 f2.8, 50 f2, 16 to 55 2.8, and the 70 to 300. I love big lenses, but they're heavy, and I tend to use them when I'm going somewhere for photography focused day or a photo shoot. For every day, I love my little lenses, but I can't find an option that's wider than 27 that I like. I've had the XF16 2.8 and the XF18 2 in the past, but I didn't like the distortion of the 16, and the secondhand copy of the 18 I bought had very crunchy aperture ring that I hated. Sounds like it might have just been that particular one. Anyway, I like the XF18 f2, but for an old lens, a new copy is still expensive, and it doesn't resolve the 40 megapixels of the X-T5, so I can't justify the 500 plus British pounds sterling. I've looked at the XF23 f2, but the focal length is so similar to the 27 that it wouldn't offer me enough of a difference, I don't think. So my question is, can you help me with a lens wider than the XF27? I'm looking for something compact with an aperture ring and with great sharpness. For the right lens, price doesn't matter too much because I can save up for it, but I can't even find a lens that fulfills my criteria. Tom, any suggestions?
No. Do you know what? I'm the worst. I am the worst guest here, aren't I? Do you have anything relevant to add, Tom? No. Not really. Not really. I can plug my presets one more time if you like. No, unfortunately I don't. To be honest, I usually shoot with like 35 to 50. So I'm the wrong man, unfortunately, to ask. So I pass it over to the gurus of photography, not this complete chump.
Well, check out Tom's channel, and he'll recommend get this classic Samsung or this old school Konica. That's the way to do it. Which is
I don't like good image quality.
Yeah, that's
that's easier. If you just set. What?
That might be the problem. Actually, you know what? Funny enough, that might be the problem. The 18 mil, it does have a crunchy manual focus. It's not a good manual focus. It's not great. But the second version does help to get some extra resolution out of that 40 megapixel sensor. Maybe not all of it, but it does help a little bit. That might still be your best choice for something that's going to be decently sharp, have that wide aperture, and give you something quite different than what you already have. there's not a lot wider than that that's good. I kind of scoured through some of the good choices like TT Artisans. I would say TT Artisans tends to make better lenses as far as optical performance goes than some of the other Chinese manufacturers, but they make a 27, which you already have. Like, that's not any good. And anything wider than that tends to be fairly, we'll just say it's got a lot of character, if that makes sense, if you can read between the lines there. So same thing with like 7 Artisans and stuff. I haven't really found a wider lens than that would give you what you're looking for, other than like a very expensive 16mm 1.4.
So I was gonna say, so if you're willing to compromise on one of the aspects, the 18mm f1.4 is gorgeous, basically a flawless lens. It is a little bit larger, but still fairly compact, the Fujifilm version. But I absolutely love the Sigma 16mm 1.4. It's cheap, it's extremely small, it rocks, but it doesn't have an aperture ring. So if you're willing to compromise on either size or aperture ring, those would be my 2 recommendations. I'm a huge fan of both of those lenses.
All right, I actually have a suggestion. The Viltrox 13mm f1.4 might be a good choice. It's made specifically for XF mount, and it's not super compact. I guess not when it's attached to the XE3 that I'm seeing in this picture, but I do think this will get you wide and fast. And
will it be sharp?
I think it's reasonably sharp. You guys haven't tested it, but we have a review on PetaPixel where, yes, they think that there's a decent place for this at the $429 asking price. So, I mean, it's not
my cake.
Not a huge investment. All right, we're going to do one more before we get to the feel-good story of the week. And this one is from Julie, and it's an email. Hello, my name is Julie, and I'm not sure if this is the right place to reach Jaren. It was. But I want to say thank you. After your podcast talking about your dad and his photos, I've thought about it for a long while, and I ended up buying a Canon Selfie CP1500, printing some things for friends, family, and me. It's an amazing feeling to have physical copies of things I shot in hand. Having a printer makes it exciting to have things to print, too. I can print what I want and have it when I want it, and the images are great, even the blurry ones. Thank you for your advice. You're welcome. I'm glad that you're enjoying it. That made me feel pretty good, but I got something else.
Ooh.
What do you guys think happens when you scan film with film and then scan the film shot of the film scanning film with film?
I think that's a tongue twister, and this isn't actually a question. You just wanted to see if you could say it.
Yes, by the way, Tom, it's filmception. YouTuber Max Adams decided to find out what did actually happen here. And I want to ask you guys, before I tell you the results, if you were to take a picture, you get a negative, right, on your film. Mm-hmm. If you were to scan that using a traditional film camera, it would presumably also take a negative of that negative. What happens then? What do you think that looks like when you look at the bare film before you scanned it?
I think your colors would go weird. I don't know.
That's an interpositive, isn't it? I feel like I've heard that phrase used when they're striking a fresh neg.
No, this is new
any
to
thoughts,
me.
Tom, before I say what happened?
This is new to me. No, I'm not that. I'm going to shock you all here and say that I'm not that experienced with film, because apparently today I'm not that experienced with a lot. So I am, but I'm very eager to learn.
Well, Jordan, I think you probably came the closest. It appears positive on the negative. Like, you look at it on a light table, it would look correct. Like, you're looking at it correctly. When you do scan it in, yeah, the colors get all jacked up, Chris. They're not right. But weirdly, scanning it again with another film shot results in slightly muted, but almost correct color. So, I don't know. I thought this was a fun project that he decided to go try. The results are bizarre. I'll link to the YouTube video. It's worth watching. It's very entertaining. It's pretty short. And you will be able to see what happens when you not only scan with the film that you started with, what happens if you start taking film with other films emulations of the original scans. It sounds
expensive.
It gets real weird.
Expensive.
Well, yeah. Well, film is not cheap. It's fun, though. Come on, Chris,
it used to be. Let me tell you. Oh.
You know, speaking of that, by the way, I tried to
Them's were the days.
Do you guys know what's going on with Fujifilm film? Like, I would love to go get new Fujifilm, like Provia or Velvia, but no one has it. And if you can
TCS
find
has it,
it's like $35 a roll. How much does it cost?
Stupid
in there?
expensive.
Yeah, like why?
the Kodak Gold certainly has like conquered the planet, you know, in any of your like affordable places.
Yeah,
you know,
I don't like Kodak
box
Gold
stores
very
and
much.
stuff. Yeah. TCS has a lot of Fujifilm, and there's a lot of. I'm not going to say no name film. There's a lot of reloaded Fujifilm film as well.
There's no film left because some dude has decided to buy it all up and take photos and scan it and photos and scan it and photos and scan it and photos and scan it. He's just in a dark room somewhere with like reels everywhere. I must scan. I must find out. And then at the end of it all, you find the meaning to life.
That's right.
Yeah, with very muted colors.
That's right.
Yeah, that's it.
Okay. That's going to do it this week. Tom, thanks for joining us. Thanks for being part of the conversation about compact cameras. That was fun. Anything to close with, guys? I'm done. I'm good.
Happy birthday, Chris.
Oh, yeah. That's
Oh,
right.
thanks.
One more time.
Thanks.
Okay.
And again,
Happy birthday, Chris.
thank you. Definitely check out Tom's channel, especially if you're looking at old school digital cameras. That's where the expertise is.
If you want any
definitely wanna
recent
watch
advice, I cannot give it. But old stuff, I can help with.
that. Absolutely.
Cheers. We'll catch you all next week.
Bye.
Bye.